I am Daniel Lucas, and welcome to Book 101. Book 101 is all about the books that I read for the last 40 years. And today, I have my special guest. She's a best-selling author, no other than Miss Tina Baker.
Daniel, thank you. I would love you to follow me around in life and just introduce me like that because it's such a confidence boost.
Of course, Miss Tina. And can you please again introduce yourself?
So, I'm Tina Baker. I live in London, England, and I have written four novels. Three are already published, and one's coming out next year. My genre is dark, but with humour, psychological thrillers. Some call it domestic noir. And my very first book was Call Me Mummy. That was a number one ebook bestseller. And I've got my current hardback is Make Me Clean.
Miss Tina, let's do the recap of a book that we talked about last week. Make Me Clean.
Yes, so my current thriller is about a cleaner. I've been a cleaner in my past life. My mum and dad were cleaners, and I'd not read many books featuring that. So the cleaner starts to clean up more than sort of your normal stains and dust and starts to clean up some blood stains.
Interesting indeed. Make Me Clean, please do buy the latest novel of Miss Tina. So let's talk about your best-selling novel.
Yes, so I've always wanted children, and we tried, and it didn't happen for us. And in the middle of like going through IVF treatment, feeling desperate, I did wonder what would it be like if I just stole one? And I promise you, Daniel, I didn't. You can search my house. There are no stolen children here. But that was the idea for my debut novel because it's really painful. And also I thought, what makes me think I would have been a good mother anyway? My own mother had lots of issues. We didn't get on. And people just assume you're going to be a parent. And it's a primal urge I've always felt that I'd want a mother. But now I mother my cats. Now at work when I'm teaching, no, you do. You find ways to use that instinct, and it's love, really, isn't it? I'm sure you find it when you're looking after your old people. I found it when I was teaching older people keep fit. It's just a way of using the maternal, paternal instinct. Raising a pot plant is a form of love and parental sort of nurturing. But the woman who steals the child in Call Me Mummy, who is desperate for someone to call her mummy. In fact, I very deliberately didn't give her a name. All you she's only referred to as mummy because she's become obsessed. But she's hopeless, and worse than that, quite abusive. And talking of nurturing, she has no idea how to nurture a child and is quite paranoid. Obviously you would be if you had to go into hiding because the press and the police are looking for you. She finds it very difficult because she's a nice middle class woman, and the child she takes, Tonya, is not. She's a young kid who's got a mum who really, trailer trash, I think it would be the international term for it. Quite working class over here. She commits the unspeakable crime of smoking while pregnant. And, the internet goes wild and she's dubbed a scummy mummy. So, these pile-ons on Twitter and, Instagram and everything. I think it's so easy to judge other people. So I very deliberately chose the name Tonya for the little girl after Tonya, the ice skater, who again was
Yes.
quite a working class skater in in a world which was full of nice, privileged women. I'm not sort of saying I condone what she did, but I love that film. And I just was fascinated by that story. And even your name brands you. I think in Britain it's even more so. It brands you as a certain class, whether you're upper, middle.
Call me mommy. How did you crafted it?
Well, I went back to school at a very late age to do a master's in novel writing. So I'd been a journalist for 30 years, but it's very different from writing a novel. So I thought, well, I'd better learn the basics. So for 2 years, it was a night school. On top of my day job, I did that. And it came to me, that idea, doing that course. But that wasn't the novel I wrote on the course. That was after I finished the course, I started writing Call Me Mummy. And it was quite cathartic because it was admitting things that I think a lot of women have tried for a child, and sometimes it doesn't work. So I was talking about grief and anger and feeling wrong, and the fact that you can't win as a mother. You know, other women as well as men judge you for how you parent. Enough to have godchildren, but I would never think of criticizing or saying anything about another person's parenting style, but people do. And certainly on Twitter and Instagram, because it's faceless. Things you would never say to another person in real life. I think you'd say awful things online. And celebrities, I think, get it a lot. And there was a very famous case in Britain, Madeleine McCann, a little girl who went missing on a holiday in Portugal. And that really stuck with me, how her parents, and they were doctors, were just vilified in the press, crucified in the press. And you just think, as if it's not the worst thing in the world to happen to you, to lose a child in those circumstances. They've never to this day discovered. We assume she's been murdered, but you just don't know. And there's always that glimmer of hope. And the novel sort of plays with that. What must it be like for the mother who's lost the child, and then this very warped world of the mother. She's not really the mother, but the woman desperate to be a mother who's stolen the child, and she can't cook. She's rubbish at nurturing a child through food, and it becomes quite, as if it's not dark enough about stealing a child. It becomes even more warped because she's unable to nurture a child by looking after her, by giving her the sort of foods that she's used to. So yes, it's heartbreaking, but I do believe I've got some very dark humor in there as well.
Yes, indeed, Miss Tina. So, what behind your debut novel, Call Me Mommy?
Well, just my own personal experiences, really. The grief of never being a mother in real life. No one has ever called me mummy. So that's, the heart into that. It was like writing my heart and soul and my dirty washing. It's sort of admitting all of those horrible feelings. And also the fear that I would not have been a good mother anyway. And that stopped me from fostering or adoption. Going down, I thought I'd be judged, which is sad, really, because looking back, I think I'm no worse than anybody else. We've all got our hang ups, we've all got our good points. So that's really what's behind it.
Yes, indeed, Miss Tina. So, before we go on, I want to shout out to the people listening in Finland. Thank you so much, Finland, for supporting this podcast. In Usima, I get 64%. North Karelia at 7%. North Savo at 7%. 7%. Southwest Finland at 7%. Pirkanmaa at 7%. North Ostrobothnia at 7%. Thank you so much for supporting this podcast, because this podcast is created to empower writers all over the world. like Miss Tina Baker.
Well, you call it writing 101. I did want to say you don't have to do an MA or a novel writing course at all. That was just my choice. So writing 101, I think I've said before, it's literally sitting down and 99% perspiration, 1% inspiration. That's the only way you become a writer, really. And I do think the imposter syndrome, everybody suffers from it to some degree. And even now, I've written 4 novels, I still feel shy about saying, "Oh yes, I'm a best-selling author." I don't know if that's a female thing because I've spoken to male authors and they feel the same, or whether we've got this idea that authors and novelists are like Dostoevsky, they've got to be, someone from the past because everybody's got a valid life experience. We've all got different experiences, and I think sharing different voices is very much modern life now. I think the writing world and publishing has broadened for the better, because people like me, as in, I know one other novelist who comes from a similar background. So, my family on my mum's side was fairground traveling people. We lived in a caravan, and my dad was a window cleaner. So there aren't many of us. There are more and more writers of color, black writers, ethnic writers, writers who are working class, but that hasn't always been the case. And I'm quite glad that the publishing industry has opened up, and things like your podcast has really helped because you can talk about a book and get to an international audience. Thanks to social media, thanks to the internet, we would never have had that opportunity. 50 years ago, 100 years ago, I'd have been down the pit. I'd have been an old pit pony. I mean, I would. That's
Yes.
my background. So I just think that that's the good side of the internet and social media.
Yes, it is. And according to my analytics, Miss Tina, I had 140 countries listening to me. So thank you for
That's
those.
amazing, Daniel. That is
Yes.
fantastic.
Yes. I created this podcast to empower writers all over the world like you, Miss Tina. Sometimes I procrastinating. I need to do this. I need
We
to
all have that. All of
yes.
us have that.
So Miss Tina, what are your inspiration in writing?
I think it's got to come from an emotional core for me. So I've made friends with writers. Again, I feel quite shy saying that, but my publisher, I chat to them online nearly every day, let alone every week. And some of those are historical novelists. Well, I didn't really do history very far at school. I certainly didn't do it at university. I did English. So that's not my motivation. Some of them are sci-fi writers or fantasy authors, but for me, I love reading that, but I sort of wouldn't know where to start. So it's got to have an emotional core. And usually it's the characters that come first and then the situation, putting them in a situation. So a woman desperate for a child who breaks at that point and then takes one, and then everything comes from that. How's she going to hide her? What's she going to do? The child's not the pretty little princess that she'd hoped for. She's quite, bolshy. And then sort of I write it as linear as I can. But actually what really happens, because I don't plot it, I'm what they call a pantster. So I sort of write a chapter and then I might have another idea and write a chapter that wouldn't come immediately after. So in the end, it's like a patchwork quilt. So different scenes come to mind, and then the rewrites quite a lot for me. I know some people who plan it all out. They have an Excel sheet or post-its on the wall, and I wish my brain worked like that, but it's not. It's never worked like that.
Yes, and according to Amazon, Christina, you got 1,185 global ratings, and they give you 53% Five
Now, I'm
stars.
hoping that's good because you're the one for the analytics. My husband loves it, but I'm not very good on numbers. Um, and I have to be, obviously. I'm not doing that girly thing, which is like, oh, I can't add up. I do my taxes, I pay my taxes, but
Yes.
it's not the be all and end all for me. Everybody wants to be a best-selling author. Everybody would love to see a film, or, well, I'll say everybody, me, and most people I know would love to see. I don't know if it's everybody, but most people would love to see, a screen adaptation on television or Netflix or, Amazon or.
Yes, indeed, Miss Tina. Everybody want to be on number one spot. Like my podcast book one review, it's on number 5. So I want to be on number one.
Yes, and why shouldn't you want to be that? I'm just
Yes.
saying that sometimes I think we can judge ourselves if we're not number one. And you don't have to write a best-selling novel. You can write for yourself, you can write for your family. For me, I really wanted it to be traditionally published. But nowadays, you can publish it yourself. I've got friends who were on the course with me who've self-published, who've, paid for it themselves. There's loads of ways to do it now. I'm not an expert in that, but online there are lots of guides of how to do it. I would be nervous about paying somebody to publish, what they used to call vanity publishing, but even that, it's not, a bad thing. It's just like, if you've got the money, do it. But I wouldn't be comfortable, mainly because I don't have the money to pay somebody to publish for me. It's got to be like a job for me. But if you're rich, yeah, get it out there any way that you can.
Yes, definitely. And according to Mandy Griffiths, disturbing but great debut novel.
It is disturbing. I'm a disturbed woman. What can I tell you? I'm a
So,
walking trigger warning, really. And I do make light of that. I mean, some horrible things have happened in my life. Not having a child was one of them. I was heartbroken. But when I think of it, if I hadn't gone through those life experiences, I wouldn't be able to write dark, disturbing, but hopefully funny books. I wouldn't be able to write them in the same way. These days, I think people look at what you bring to it. Why should you tell that story? I'm not saying you can't tell a story, but you would tell it in a different way than I would tell it. And that's your individual, unique voice. In real life, I'm quite sweary. So I'm doing very well on your podcast. I don't think I've ever sworn. And I can do that broadcast voice. But when I'm writing, that's my vernacular, that's my dialect, that's how I was brought up. And some people in the reviews have said, oh, we don't like the swearing. And it's like, the swearing's the least of it. Somebody's stolen a child. Why are you not offended by that? And it's the same with a lot of crime novels are really horrible in the circumstances, but the language isn't the sort of language I hear on the streets of London. It's
mm,
not as sweary as Irving Welsh. Perhaps
yes.
it's because I'm a woman, but now my later novels have got less swearing because it seemed to distract some people. But it's how I speak. Stephen King writes real, authentic working class voices. I think he's brilliant at that. It's not sort of high art because people don't think or speak like that. Or very few people I know think or speak in a sort of high literary voice, not in the sort of novels you read.
Oh, yes, indeed, Miss Tina. And according to Mr. Joe's Jacob Collins, prepare to be grieved. Oh, I love this.
I love it too. Are you all right? This is not about novels, but I've been worried about you because of the fires. Are you okay over there?
Oh, yeah, well, I'm good, Miss Tina. I'm good. I'm too far from there. But the residence that I'm working is near, so we're safe.
Yeah, because it's so worrying. I know I'm nowhere near it, but it's hot in London at the moment, and the thought of it, sort of breathing in smoke. I'm
Yes.
really glad you're safe. I know that's
Yes.
nothing to do with my books, but when I've been thinking about you. When you
Yes.
talk to somebody, it's like you know them
Yes.
in a certain way. So I'm glad you're all okay.
Yes, definitely. And every summer, Miss Tina, we are burning. It's climate change, people. Please do your part to combat climate change because it's really affected us. Our generation to generation to come will suffer.
Absolutely. I mean, I recycle. I'm quite obsessive about that. I no longer have a car, as I've told you, but I still feel guilty. I live in London and it's so polluted with cars that you taste it in the air sometimes. So,
Yes.
we'll have to do something. It's not just individuals. I just believe governments will have to do something because it just can't go on.
Yes, definitely. It will become more aggressive as we go to the 22nd century.
Yes, I think so.
So, Miss Tina, call me mommy. What else you can say about it?
Well, it's available on audiobook and Kindle, and it is coming to Canada and America soon. I don't know how people generally like to read books. I like to read in bed and I like to read paperbacks. So the only hardbacks I've ever sort of bought are friends' hardbacks because I find them too heavy. And I'm trying to get into Kindle reading in bed as well. So I'm not very good on the audiobooks because I get distracted. So I just think nowadays there's so many different formats you can read them on. My husband reads books on the phone, on the tube, on the way into work. And I can't do that. I need a physical copy of my book. So
Mm.
it's available on different formats, and I think I was quite lucky because it came out in lockdown, and I was really sad. And then lots of people bought it on ebook, so that's why it became a number one bestseller. So every cloud's got a silver lining, and I was very
Yes.
grateful for that.
Yes.
I was so anxious in lockdown, and I was quite privileged. I didn't have to go to work because I could do it on Zoom, and I could sit at home writing because that's my job. But I just was so anxious. I almost got agoraphobia. I would go and sit outside my house, but I wouldn't go anywhere. So that was a real boost for me to think that people were reading my debut novel. And the very first time I went out all masked up, I went to my local bookshop and cried, seeing my book in a bookshop when the bookshops reopened again. Was a huge thing for me. I've wanted it all my life. So I was so thrilled that my debut did well. And I've just given him my fourth novel, and I'm doing two treatments for another couple of ideas. And then I will rewrite the one I wrote on my university course, the one set in a circus. So, yeah, I'm full of ideas. It's just getting the time and the discipline to make sure you write them.
Definitely, indeed. And it's a great achievement and priceless, as they said, if you see your books on the shelf.
Oh, that is something that money can't buy,
Why,
literally.
yes.
And I can remember going to a train station and seeing it in a shop at a train station. And again, crying, Daniel, just crying. People are thinking, what's this
Uh,
mad woman doing crying in this shop?
yes, indeed. Miss Tina, I want to share to you my photography book. So, Miss Tina, thank you for your time.
And thank you, Daniel. Lots of love. Stay safe.
Yes, and catch you next week the same time for your
Yeah.
third novel. Bless you, Miss Tina. Maricon people, see you soon.